Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Adam Goodman, partner at Ballard Partners. Adam, thanks so much for joining me.
Great to be with you again, Brittany.
It is great to have you, and I always appreciate our conversations and your insight, especially right now because we seem to be at a really heavy moment.
Yeah.
Conservative activist and Turning Point USA co-founder Charlie Kirk was assassinated last week at an event at a Utah university. So to start off the conversation, what do you make of the moment our country is in right now?
Well, this is more than just a personal tragedy. It's like a national alarm bell just went off and it woke everybody up. I've talked to a number of people here in DC who knew Charlie Kirk and were somewhat close to Charlie Kirk. And a lot of these people are like Charlie in their 30s, full of life, full of, optimism about what's ahead. And they couldn't help but reflect back on how this is eerily close to where they could have been, perhaps on another day in another way. A lot of these people are parents of young children like Charlie Kirk. A lot of these people are serving in public office and putting out, very public messages. Certainly that's something that Charlie Kirk did with abandon. And so that it's hard to kind of divorce your own life, I guess, from those, especially in their 30s, looking at Charlie Kirk as maybe the apostle of a new kind of way of talking about things and talking through things, and seeing when his life was cut short and that conversation was cut short, how that can't do anything but really have a chilling effect on everyone, regardless of your ideology, frankly, regardless of your age. It's one of those moments that stopped everyone in their tracks and made us reflect maybe more deeply than ever about why this happened, what responsibility maybe some or all of us have had in some way in this having occurred. Because, you've seen a lot of talk, Brittany, about, is this is inevitable in politics in the public space, some blame about why this, came to pass. Obviously, I think there have been a lot of lessons learned since we saw the college protests against the situation in Gaza, not so long ago, that caused the jobs of a lot of college presidents who were unwilling to draw the line between obvious wrong versus right. And what you're seeing in this with Charlie Kirk is a lot of people, a lot of institutions did draw the line. MSNBC, fired one of their longtime contributors over insensitive comments. There have been college presidents, like my good friend Adam Hasner at FAU, who did the same with an employee who crossed the line. And it's not like, hey, you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't do that. It is like, we're not tolerating that intolerance anymore. And maybe if there's a wrinkle, a positive wrinkle to any of this, which you hate to even say in that way, it is that maybe we're going to grow up a bit and maybe we're going to change a bit. Maybe this is the moment where we say, you know what, bridge too far. Let's dial it back a bit and find out truly how we can talk to one another again, how we can kind of pull for one another again, regardless of our differences of opinion, our differences of party, ideology, walks of life, all of those things. So maybe, Brittany, just maybe, there'll be a real positive effect of a very tragic event.
And Charlie Kirk was in his early 30s, and he would go viral on social media for liberals debating people on college campuses. If you were an attendee at one of his events, you could participate in the Prove Me Wrong debate, where you would go have a head-to-head essentially with Charlie Kirk. And those were just words. I mean, do you think that this is going to embolden people to keep talking, to keep having those dialogues? Do you think it's going to completely shut them down? I mean, what does this look like for the future of conversations in this country about political disagreements? Because that is one of the good things about being an American, right? You and I could have a disagreement and then, put it aside. I mean, that's what I thought it used to be. And now it seems like we're in a different place.
Well, there is no freedom of speech when you feel threatened to be free to speak your mind, right? Number one. If you would watch any of Charlie Kirk's stuff from the past, the engagements, they were fascinating. It wasn't just interesting theater, right, so to speak. It was truly interesting attempts by Charlie Kirk to engage someone in a substantive, meaningful conversation. A lot of times, he went on college campuses, college students would engage him. And what Charlie would normally do is say, okay, it's not, and frankly, it's not about the difference of opinion that Charlie had with whoever he was conversing with. It wanted them to defend their point of view, not with bile and bias and prejudice, but with reason, common sense, and truth, right? He challenged them to be truthful, to be factual. Tell me why you feel that way. And more often than not, those that were highly emotional were very underwhelming in terms of substantively defending their perspective. And that in itself is revealing. And maybe that's a reflection, Brittany, of the social media world we now live in, where we kind of converse in short form. We converse without maybe the sensitivity we would have if you and I, for instance, were together in a room. And, we're kind of reacting to each other differently than we would just even doing this interview by Zoom. And I think that was the value that Charlie was trying to bring into play. If you disagree with me, fine, that's fine. Tell me why. But don't just say, I don't like you. I don't like what you're saying. Okay, what else? What is it about what I'm saying that's not true, that you disagree with? And that's fine, again, if you're coming from a different direction, but don't do that out of pure emotion and frankly, misinformation and ignorance. Bring it substantively. And I hope if people would study what Charlie Kirk did in his very short life, if there's any takeaway, I'd urge, especially young people, to try to find, it would be that meaning.
And especially when you use social media, when people are just on social media all the time, I mean, it's really easy to become a keyboard warrior because it's very easy to be brave when you're leaving that comment, when you're engaging with someone behind a screen versus when you're face to face with them. And within the past couple of days, Charlie Kirk's legacy has been discussed. And it doesn't matter if you agreed with him. It doesn't matter if you thought he was polarizing. No one can deny the impact that he's had on the GOP, and particularly this conservative movement we're seeing with President Trump now. So how would you put his impact on the Republican Party into words?
Wow. Well, it was real. And it will be continuing. As you've seen, the numbers have just taken off in terms of people who are following Turning Point and are ready and embracing another chapter to come. The biggest problem, I believe, and I felt this way for years, Brittany, in America, just say, what's the one thing that keeps me awake at night? It's one word: intolerance. The fact that we are grown so intolerant of one another, of different points of view, is the biggest threat to democracy and freedom we've got. And it has gone unabated. In fact, it's grown over the years, and been a lot of things written about and discussed about why. Social media and other things that are kind of driving this, the political process. And so maybe constructively, we should be asking ourselves, okay, what are we going to do about it? Instead of mourning the loss of a young person like Charlie Kirk, who had so much more to give, and saying we've taken away from this certain lessons, let's do more than that. Let's do something. And so some of the things that would be on my list are things to do. One is, I think we should collectively shame those who are not enabling conversations, tolerant conversations that happen, I don't care where they are. And I think one of the biggest violations of that in recent times, in my opinion, has been on college campuses, where if you are right of center or a conservative or beyond, more often than not, you're made to feel very uncomfortable. You're unwelcome, unwanted, dismissed, all those things. We have to find a way to shame those who would accept that kind of intolerance. The second thing is, I think there should be tougher penalties, frankly, in the law. And this goes back not to commentators like Charlie Kirk, but to public officials. I think when anyone takes a shot at anyone that has the courage to stand up and try to serve their country, that to me is akin to treason. I think there should be much more strenuous laws, harsher laws and penalties against that. The third thing is, and I'm to blame for this as much as anybody else listening who has been in the political field, we've got to elevate our campaign rhetoric. So many campaigns to this very moment, Brittany, so many campaigns are so focused on character assassination as opposed to a discussion of the differences and ideas that we have. that would elevate us. But what we have instead are just, the two people going into the Thunderdome, right? And waiting to see who comes out alive, thinking that's some grand theater. Well, the problem with the theater is it's real theater, and its impact on the real world and on real lives is palpable. And I think we've got to find a way to embrace a higher level of communication in politics where it's not us versus them.
I think that's a really good point. And there's a Republican in New York, Joe Borelli. He was on CNN and he said that he is against Zohran Mamdani, who's running for mayor as a Democratic Socialist in New York City. And he said, but the worst thing I want to happen to Zohran Mamdani is him losing this race. Him and I were texting, and he was texting me about something he said, and we ended up joking. That was what his comments were. And I thought that was a nice reminder, right? That the worst thing you want your political opposition to do is lose a race. You can still joke, you can still have human interactions with them. Do you think people need to share more examples of that?
They will, and they'll start doing that if it starts working. I maybe I'm just an optimist at heart. Well, I am an optimist at heart. It's very clear. I believe that we have gotten to the choke point where we've had enough of this. I know in campaign politics, and I did that for over 40 years, so I'm not a newbie to that world. What's happened in recent campaign cycles is what I call the white noise effect, where you see television ads and digital ads and other kinds of placements just pounding away with huge dollars behind them, to the point where everyone, at some point, the campaign turns off. I mean, everyone, they kind of tune it out. I call it the white noise effect. And that's a lost opportunity. What they should be doing is, you know what? There are two ways to look at what we should be doing on the southern border. Two fundamental different philosophies. Here is one way to approach it, and here is another. And really going at it. I mean, hammer and tong, going at it on ideas, but not on each other.
And I mean, I think I'm an optimist too, because of course, after this really just horrific tragedy, you see people celebrating on social media. But the conversations I've had with people from both sides of the aisle they've been horrified by what they saw. They were disgusted by what they saw, and they want to get back to the America we were in. I had a conversation with a Republican strategist on 9/11, the day after this tragedy, and she said, I remember what it was like 24 years ago. No one was a Republican on the 12th of September. No one was a Democrat. We all came together, and we were all a country. And I think someone that's really trying to tamp down these temperatures is the Utah governor, Spencer Cox. This is what he said, quote, I know that things were really dark in the late 1960s, but this is our moment. Do we escalate or do we find an off-ramp? And again, it's a choice, and every one of us gets to make that choice. What do you think of this moment right now? Do you think we're going to find this off-ramp? And I know you're an optimist.
I hope we do. And what better time to do it than now? I can't imagine, Brittany, that you and I are the only ones who feel that this doesn't make us happier, more whole, more optimistic about what's ahead, even tomorrow. There's nothing but negative that comes out of an intolerant approach to an American experience. There's nothing I see but that. If we change that, everything can change. If we don't, I think we spiral even deeper into an abyss that we ourselves put ourselves in. You can't blame public officials. You can't blame people that were courageous, like Charlie Kirk, standing on his own 2 feet to try to embrace. You've got to blame all of America for not standing up before that bullet was fired at Charlie Kirk and saying to collectively and together, enough is enough. Let's get back to what makes us whole. And I'll close by saying this. I saw the other night, I think it's the second time I saw the movie 12 Strong. It was about the reaction of the horse soldiers after 9/11 and in an impossible mission in Afghanistan to try to stop the Taliban and Al-Qaeda from continuing to do the damage they had done. And as I'm watching that, and I'm reflecting on the Charlie Kirk moment, I'm like, that's the America. That's the America we want, where everyone, to your point, Brittany, everyone in this country pulled together and said, we are one. Let's go get it, right? And we need another moment like that I think this time gives us an opportunity to get there. And so far, I must say, the rhetoric, kind of the normal nasty rhetoric that attends all sorts of things, I haven't seen as much of with Charlie Kirk, and those that went that way have been dismissed, frankly. Literally, they've been dismissed. Maybe that's an encouraging first sign, but now we got to take it to the next step. And it gets more difficult the day after, the week after, the month after, to continue down that path. I hope we do.
I know, and to that point, we're looking at the week after, the weeks after, the month, the year after. We want, I mean, I know you and we want these temperatures to cool down. What do you think that this assassination, though, means for the political landscape going forward? Because we have the midterms in a little over a year. We have another presidential election, I mean, in a couple of years. But what does this do to all of those events going forward?
It's unknown. It really is unknown. Maybe it changes to some degree, normal playbooks in politics, maybe it doesn't. I tend to think that the people that generally work in politics are risk averse, which means they tend to keep playing with the same playbook until it doesn't work anymore and wait for someone to give them another book that worked maybe last year. Maybe Mamdani is helping to rewrite a kind of a new chapter in the playbook we're going to see. But of course, if you're not rooting for Mamdani, you're thinking that if he does succeed in the race for mayor, it looks like he will. It then becomes a referendum on his job as the mayor of New York and whether or not he succeeds. If he doesn't, that becomes a major, I think, midterm issue in 2026 for Republicans. If he does, it would give real hope to a Democratic Party that's been somewhat deflated in optimism on its own in recent times, gives them reason maybe to get up off the mat and cheer again. We're going to see, but that would hopefully be a referendum not on something personal about Mr. Mamdani, but on the job he does or doesn't do in managing the most important city on earth.
And President Trump reportedly credited Charlie Kirk with shoring up the youth vote to win in 2024. Mm-hmm. Do you think that, and I know that, we're still in the wake of this tragedy, but do you think that there's anyone that can potentially fill this gap? Do you think there's anyone that can carry the torch for the Republican Party that Charlie Kirk carried?
Gosh, I was asked that the other day. I was hard-pressed to come up with a name. I mean, the first person who came to mind, it's not a generational fit, was Tucker Carlson, because Tucker Carlson is straight out, right? But he has a whole different style. So I quickly discounted that. I can't think of one person that right now I know of that can fill Charlie Kirk's shoes. But if Americans, especially Gen Zers, take the right lessons from this tragedy, I think there are a number of young people who are going to fill those shoes and fill them well as we start moving forward.
I do not want to turn to the charges that the suspected shooter, Tyler Robinson, faces because they were announced right before you and I jumped on this call. He faces charges of aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily harm, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 2 counts of witness tampering, and commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child. And they are seeking the death penalty. So what do you make of the charges, and what do you make of the prosecutors seeking the death penalty here?
Well, those who believe in the death penalty for certain offenses are going to certainly favor moving in that direction if the suspect is proven guilty. By his own writings, apparently, I think he said something to the effect, Brittany, that he was tired of Charlie Kirk's hate. Now, that is a kind of hatred in and of itself, which is intolerance. This suspect, in his own words, apparently was betraying the same kind of intolerance that all of you and I have now been talking about in this show, and a lot of people have kind of had it up to here with. I think, on the other hand, whatever happens to this suspect is going to be inconsequential if the bigger lessons aren't learned from what happened and what we need to do to prevent it from happening again. That's the bigger idea, not what happens to this 22-year-old ultimately in the system of justice, which I have great faith will deal with him appropriately.
And in the recent years, we have seen just an alarming amount of acts of political violence Anything from the shooting of Representative Steve Scalise, the plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the assassination attempts of President Trump, the assassination of the Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman, just to name a few. Do you think we're going to continue to see these acts of political violence, or do you think that this is perhaps a turning point in the country right now?
Well, we can't sustain ourselves in democracy if we don't do something about it, right? If anyone who decides to have the courage and temerity to stand up and serve others is suddenly made to feel like they could be a target at any point, that's unsustainable. And you know that the people you talked about in Minnesota and other places had almost no, or actually they had no security that really was in play. You know, it's one thing for the president of the United States or a presidential candidate to have Secret Service protection. It's quite another when you're going out there and you're pretty much all on your own. Charlie Kirk, I think, had minimal security in play for his last act, so to speak, in Utah. I worry about that, and I worry about that having an even bigger chilling effect, Brittany, on others seeking to help and serve others. I hope that doesn't happen, but if we do not, send a signal loud and clear that this is completely wrong and unacceptable, and that we make it something that everybody in America, the one thing maybe in America everyone can agree on since 9/11, let's make it that.
I mean, the word or the phrase I was going to use was chilling effect when you were saying that too, because like you said, there's one thing if you're the president or someone else with high security. It's another thing if you don't have that security. Do you think that's going to scare people from saying what they want to say to having, because free speech is such a value, an American value?
Yeah, yes. It could have a chilling effect, and yes, it is a fundamental American value. One other thing I would do, by the way, just I have a creative mind, so I'm always thinking outside the box. To try to go on the positive end of this, I think they should start publishing lists of communities around America based on tolerance. Like, if you're a liberal or progressive living in Seattle, Washington, you probably feel comfortable because most people in Seattle, Washington tend to identify with a more liberal progressive agenda. But if you're not, you're made to feel like almost an outcast. There are a lot of communities in America that don't pass those kind of judgments, that go back to those wonderful things of neighborhood values and neighborliness and people pulling for each other. And I think those parts of the country, if they were to suddenly be rated as the places to live, I bet maybe just as we, with our feet, started to move our geography, a lot of people from north to south in the last 5 years since COVID. I think the same thing could happen if certain parts of America say, you're welcome here. You being the big U. Wherever you come from, you're going to be welcomed, loved, and supported. I think those communities could be the big winners here. Those who show intolerance, however, I think are headed down the other side of the mountain.
Well, I think we'll end it on an optimistic note, because hopefully this rings true. I hope that everyone has this optimistic tenor that you and I have. Adam Goodman, thank you so much. You are welcome back anytime. I always appreciate our conversations.
Goes both ways, Brittany. Thank you very much.